Hey guys, Aevs here from Crypto, and today I'm just continuing our series on the tutorials of how our indicators work, what they are, what each one's designed to do, and how you can use them to get an edge in the market during day-to-day trading. So today I wanted to cover Runar, which actually means secret wisdom in the old Norse tongue, which is just sort of a theme I have going. But anyway, let's jump straight into it and look at another BTC chart today, historic of course, but just how the indicators work in real time, what they mean to you, and how you can best use them. So last time I covered current and the volatility bands, both actually present on the screen right now. But we are looking at Runar, which is a more modern iteration on those two indicators, as well as the new oscillator that you do see down the bottom with specific signals that are being called out to you at various points in the market. Look, so Runar is it's not something that I've been using for a long time. Like I said, it's only a fairly recent one, but it has had huge success for myself and other people within our group. And you can talk to them personally about how they've used it and how they've benefited. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, how amazing it is. I'd rather let them do it. But what I can do is show you how it works. So let's just jump straight into this. So the first one is just looking at these charts. When BTC just hit its recent high, the bullish high. You can draw lines for days down here and go, yeah, that's bearish, or it's great. We were in a wedge and people didn't know which way it was going to go. The really cool thing about Runar is what it's added on top of current. Now, current was really hard to read for some people because it wasn't directional. So you would only get a reading once we hit an absolute top or bottom. Now, what I'm talking about is when it's up here, it's very clear. Short the hell out of Bitcoin right now. We are so overbought that there is no way that you should be continuing this trade as a long. Start looking for the short. The thing is, it will actually start calling it fairly early, so you'll see that it starts to say, okay, look for the short, look for the short, look for the short. And this was fairly hard. I mean, this was not an easy play. I think I actually ended up shorting around 12.4 when it finally bounced back up. As we did this full mean reversion, but I did close my long at about 13.6 from memory. So look, the first thing we have is, again, just a quick recap. Volatility bands show that we have a strong uptrend. We just never break back in. We do eventually break back in here, which technically justifies our trend has ended, and that we should now be looking at the market moving really volatile within these bands, or just within the central zone, which is the big blue band that you see on the screen. Um, and that we shouldn't be expecting too large movements, and we're just going to go through those really quickly as well. The first thing that I get here is that Runar is telling me to start looking for a short, and on this time frame, I'm going, okay, well, it's all the way up here. How do I know when to actually engage my short? When do I know when to actually do what I think I should be doing? The first one is, if you want to play it really safe, wait till we break back into the CC. Plain and simple. It's still a very profitable trade as we mean revert, and I covered that in the previous video. And you were able to do that. But if we zoomed in down to the 1 hour, which I'm not going to do right now because honestly it's just going to detract from the video, you would see that it was a lot closer to the top that it called it, and it also called the bottom up here. Actually, no, let me just do that. There's no point in just sitting here telling you what it will do or won't do unless I can actually show you. Here we go. So it was calling the short, and I'm just going to open this up just so you can see exactly why I took it at the specific place that I did. So here you can see basically all of them are 99, 98, 97. Generally a very good sign that you are at the absolute peak. You can see it keeps increasing, and when it gets to that level of being oversold, usually the next tick would be up to 99 for all three of them. Oh, close enough to read. That would be your get the hell out. And it's fairly simple. The next thing we actually notice is that on Runar, we do start losing momentum, or what I'd call energy in the market. So it's not a momentum oscillator. It looks like one, so you can apply divergence just the same way that you would with traditional momentum oscillators. But the way that it's actually measuring is the volatility index that we have, and how far overextended we are within the current period, and how likely we are to continue our trend or reverse, in which case we do down here. So you're starting to see it weakening. You could technically take the short up here and still be relatively safe. It was another $400 move, but it was very short. Most traders wouldn't survive that, generally just because they're over leveraged. But that is where you would generally start looking. We do kind of retrace all the way down. We mean revert. If you're using the bands, this is the perfect place for you to take along. It does bounce back up, and I can show it to you here as well. So where is it? Oh, it's only doing it on the short term on the 1 hour here, which is a bit of a... There it is. It's really not showing itself right now. There's a couple of examples further down, I think, where it did do so beautifully. There's one there, another one there. And what I'm talking about is when you're in a dominant trend down, you can basically look to short on those periods, and long when current is actually telling you, hey, you want to be looking for longs, you want to be looking for longs, you want to be looking for a short, and that one is not valid. So anyway, look, just to go back to what Runar actually does and not focus too much on current, which sits behind it. So Runar is future looking. This is really, really important. A lot of people think that they can just come in here and, long on the first green dot or the red dot, etc. And that actually works. It's okay. Just expect some drawdown, right? We are looking at a 1 hour chart. Price is going to whip up and down. And where is it? Like, I think it's actually more recent that we actually saw the... Actually, let's just, before we go all the way down there, let's just talk about what these dots mean. So the lines on the bottom, that is current telling you to look for a short, and when it's green, it's telling you to look for a long, which it does there, and bang, price just runs up, right? This is at the this is just after our initial little burst up, and people were all excited. There's your short, and then it's telling you, well, stay short, and eventually price starts to mean revert because we hit the bottom of the third band, continues up, and then we start seeing that massive sell-off again, and we're going to get into how we actually recognize these sell-offs as well, but that is for another lesson. We finally hit this bottom, we get a green, great, long, away you go. You see that it doesn't quite catch it here. It's absolutely fine. It won't catch everything in the market. It's just another tool for you to help recognize when the market is within a specific position, and as you zoom into different time frames, you will get those confirmations. If you're using other indicators alongside it, that's great, but just by itself you will be able to catch most tops and bottoms just using the actual current reading. So Runar, what it's going to do is it's going to tell you that there's two things happening here. One, we have a bit of a divergence, right? And what happens is the minute you have that divergence confirmed, price just starts to rocket up. We actually have the reverse here. We do see it weakening. It's not very weak, but then we start to see it trickling down. And basically what happens is that the minute this rolls down, a lot of people would have remained bullish at this point, right? BTC just hit 14k. It does this absolutely massive retrace, has these massive wicks down the bottom. How can we be failing? We are just, resetting. We're just going to keep going, etc. That's the stuff that I saw in the market. At this point, I turned bearish. So what happened is Runar started telling me, hey man, look, you need to be bearish from now on. BTC is probably not going to continue its run for so much longer. And you do see it here. It does say, okay, well, there's some bearishness coming in. Turned slightly bullish just before the run, and then that bearishness remains. And then we continue. So again, by itself not an indicator that tells you to long or short at that exact point, but you're able to do so and remain relatively profitable. I don't advise it. I don't use it that way. The only thing I use it for is to determine market sentiment at various time frames. That's the most important part. I don't just look at this 1 hour and just go, yeah, that's a short, that's a long. I will look at what it's telling me about the general sentiment, because this is actually filtered by the daily, and we're going to get into the settings in just a second. So the first thing I see here is we get a green dot, and then price just explodes. And there's nothing else. It's not printing anything else to me to say that I should short, I should long. It just gave me this first green dot to say price is about to explode. Make sure you're on, you remain in longs, and so I do ignore this. There's no reason to look at this, and once you start getting a feeling for it, I mean, this is nothing. 12 is like being on 45 or 65 on the RSI. It's just no man's land. It's really not going to mean much to me. But these other peaks are telling me, hey, we're above 20. We're actually having some really decent energy in the market, or volatility to keep moving up. And then with current behind it telling me, well, look, you're going to hit a top here, great. And then we see the red coming up, which is, yep, that's expected. And then eventually we just continue back up. So scrolling further down, the next one we have is we get a red dot right here. The market sort of goes into this weird pattern. The red dot does predict that next drop down, and then there's not much here to tell me that it hits the third, and then just kind of, this is just really volatile. You can't trade it on the 1 hour. That's perfectly fine. I'm not going to sit here making excuses for it. It's not something that I would trade on the 1 hour. We get another red dot down here, and we see this massive move down in price. And we got and this is the most exciting one. I absolutely love this, right? We got this red dot for this last drop. How long was that? Almost 2 days before the drop actually happened. The trend continued in our favor, right? We were short from, well, sorry, I was short from 12,400. It was way back. It's just a very long swing trade, but people started shorting from about 10,200, and they were just holding that, and it was just an absolutely enormous profit once everything did hit, especially running 10x leverage, which is the general rule we do follow. But look, you just saw what was there and what wasn't. It was fairly empty. There wasn't a lot going on. That's because I'm using what's called the daily filter. So what that's going to do is, based on what the daily time frame is telling it, it's going to filter out all the noise in between. It's just going to filter on the big moves that tell us something's about to happen. So it's basically printing only the daily signals on your 1 hour chart, so that you're absolutely certain about what's going on. So when we turn that off, suddenly we have a hell of a lot more going on, right? You can start to see that this is bearish, bearish, bearish. It throws a small green signal here, which doesn't actually equate to much, and that was a pretty terrible one, I will be honest. Not a good one, but it turns red again pretty quickly, and you start to see that eventual decline. It stays red. Stays red even as we are transitioning into this very bottom ranges, and it just you see then current kicking in as we start to hit these absolute oversold zones. Again, played 9,000. What is it? 8,400, I think. Anyway, and closed it off pretty quickly. Point is that it's predictive. What it's telling me is what the market is looking to do before it does it. So when you see these, like here, you've got these 3 green dots, right? This is just confirmation to keep your long open, man. You're good. You're good. The volatility bands here is my measurement for when trend breaks down. Trend doesn't actually break down right up until here, and that's where I close my close my long, and I start looking for a short, and bang, Runar immediately starts telling me to look for a short. Now, the most important thing to recognize with Runar is because it's predictive, you can't just go entering on the dots themselves, right? If I entered right here, I still suffered a drawdown when that thing ran up. Yes, I could have profited short term down to the mean and closed that. That's perfectly fine. That's a valid strategy. But when you start entering too early, you actually want to be looking to short the top of the bands to build your position over time, because what Runar's telling me is it's just staying red, right, all the way through, and then we eventually have this huge drop down before it turns green to say, hey, you're going to have a bit of a run up. Turns red for a brief period of time, going, oh, I'm not sure, I'm going to cancel that, and it goes, oh, no, you're good. And we do eventually break out of the CZ, and we have that sustained trend back up. So again, it's not a oracle. It's not going to tell you everything exactly. It's just reading how the market is moving. It's still consuming price data. There's only so much accuracy I can draw out of these things. But look, at different time frames, they will all tell you different things. But holy crap, is it accurate? We can just use one more example before I cut this off. We see the reds starting to pop out. People don't know what point the market's going to go to. It's telling you go short, and bang, the market drops. It's telling you to start going long. People are like, oh, we don't know what BTC is going to do. It's telling you, hey man, if you want to do something, take a long, look at the bands, trying to figure out where your position should be, right? And all we see here is that, great, we have our entry right here on the third, right? Price wicks down to the third. Runar is telling you to stay long. Right here it's slightly bearish, but it's really saying, oh, it's okay. I'm bearish, price is going to move down, but I'm happy to be long. And then eventually we have this explosion up again, and trend eventually ends up there. So, 1, 2, bang, you get it. You start seeing the oversold indicator slowly starting to come through, but, it's really not up there. And then eventually right up here, yep, that's valid. There's your short. And then price just trends down again. Really not a clean exit here, but I would have exited actually closer to the mean up here. I wouldn't have played it all the way down, unless you're using that trailing stop and just sort of moving it down as price moves through different regions. So that's Runar. It's just an extension on current, which we just covered before. It is predictive. It's going to help you decide what side of the market is favorable before the market even knows. Now, higher time frames, you're definitely going to miss some of these earlier entries, but it's still going to help you just figure out what the market's here. I got confused, right? It says, hey, you should be long, price drops like hell. It says, hey, you should be short, and price suddenly starts rising again. Again, I want to point out its weaknesses, that it's not absolutely perfect, but the way we do use it is we will start on, say, the daily. Oh, where are we? We would start on the daily, and before the most recent drop, you can see that this bearish, hey, slight bullish, bearish, big drop. So that is the general way that we do use it. You can also see on the daily it's a little bit more erratic. There's not much you can do against that. It's a multi-time frame indicator. On the 6 hour, you can actually start to see that as well. We start seeing bearish signals right after that drop. You don't necessarily want to short here. You can. You would actually remain relatively profitable right up until this point. And you just see all that market volatility. Not a lot in here at that point. Oh, actually, the indicator cuts off all the way here. Yeah, that's right, because of the multiplication. So I'm just using BTC USD, which doesn't have that much data for Bybit yet. And if we drop down to the 15 minutes for you scalpers, well, it still works, right? It's still going to tell you, hey, be bullish, and price does run up, hits the top of the band. That's your point to exit, because current is still resetting, so we don't expect trend to continue. It says, hey, you can remain bullish, and price again trends up, hits the top of the third band. Current is still resetting. We're not expecting trend to continue. It eventually goes bearish, and then this one, it would have messed you up a little bit. What I'm seeing here is just two contradicting indicators. One is the bands are telling me that we have active mean reversion, and Runar is saying that we are bearish. This one would trump, right? The active mean reversion. The volatility bands are just more accurate for your intraday candles and reading where they're at. And then Runar is just better at predicting what's going to happen looking at the current market action. So you know, this is real time. This the volatility bands is going to help you decide when to enter and exit, and how strong trend is, etc. And then Runar is going to help you go, okay, well, you should look for a long, stay in a long, stay in long, stay in longs, and then eventually we hit that top, and then we start to see this weakening energy again as current completely resets for a bigger move, and then eventually we start seeing that towards the end up here. Alright guys, thank you so much, and until next time, see ya.